They thought playing with you was safe. That's the part that ruined them. They mistook your depth for softness, your patience for blindness, your silence for stupidity. They assumed you were another piece on the board, something to move, provoke, test, discard, and reuse. They never imagined you were watching the entire board while they were busy admiring their own moves. So they played. They lied casually. They manipulated strategically. They tested limits like children poking a sleeping animal, laughing every time it didn't wake up. What they didn't understand was this: you weren't asleep. You were learning. In playing with you, they didn't just misjudge your tolerance, they misjudged your nature. You weren't someone who explodes. You were someone who concludes. And conclusions are final in a way chaos never is. They believed games were about reaction. They believed control came from emotional leverage. They believed superiority came from knowing something the other person didn't. That belief was the foundation of their confidence, and you let them build on it. That's what really destroyed them. You let them believe they were winning. You let them feel clever. You let them feel untouchable. You let them feel dominant. Not because you were weak, but because you were certain. Certain enough to wait. Certain enough to watch patterns instead of moments. Certain enough to understand that people who play games always defeat themselves if given enough time. They thought they were running circles around you. They didn't realize they were drawing their own outline for exposure. And when the realization hit them, it didn't come with shouting or revenge or spectacle. It came with something far worse. Your exit. No warning they respected. No argument they could twist. No anger they could manipulate. Just absence. That's when everything unraveled. Because the game only worked when you were present. The manipulation only mattered when there was someone to manipulate. Their power only existed inside a dynamic you quietly stepped out of. In playing with you, they built an identity around being in control of you. When you left, that identity collapsed, and people don't recover easily from identity collapse. They didn't lose you, they lost the version of themselves that existed through you. They lost the role where they felt superior. They lost the audience that validated their tactics. They lost the mirror that reflected their false importance. What remained was an empty echo. They tried to pretend nothing happened. They told themselves you were replaceable. But replacement didn't work. Because replacements don't come with history, and history was the stage where they felt powerful. New people didn't know their tricks yet, and knowing that terrified them. Because tricks only feel powerful when they're familiar. They tried to reassert control by rewriting the story, painting you as cold, painting you as unstable, painting you as dramatic. But narratives need listeners, and slowly, quietly, people stopped listening. Why? Because your silence didn't look guilty. It looked complete. Completion is devastating to manipulators. It tells them the story ended without their permission. They reached out indirectly, through mutual spaces, through subtle provocations, through half-confessions disguised as nostalgia. Nothing worked. You didn't bite. You didn't react. You didn't even correct the lies. And that's when panic replaced arrogance. Because they realized something horrifying: you didn't need to destroy them. Their own behavior did that once you stepped away. In playing with you, they exposed themselves. Every lie depended on your silence to survive. Every manipulation depended on your patience to continue. When those were gone, their actions stood alone, ugly, obvious, indefensible. They couldn't hide behind chemistry anymore. They couldn't hide behind history. They couldn't hide behind your kindness. They had to face themselves without distraction. That's what ending really looks like. You didn't attack their reputation, you removed the shield protecting it. You didn't confront their ego, you starved it. You didn't punish them, you let reality do the job. And reality is ruthless to people who live in illusion. They feel screwed beyond repair. Not because you hurt them, but because you broke the loop. The loop where they provoke, Control, dominate, reset, repeat. Once broken, it doesn't restart. They don't know how to function without the game. They don't trust themselves anymore. They don't trust others anymore. They don't trust their own strategies anymore. Because the one person they underestimated didn't just walk away, they walked away unscarred. That's what keeps them up. They expected damage, tears, collapse, obsession, something they could point to and say, "See, I mattered." What they got instead was peace on your side and chaos on theirs. They play the moment back over and over, trying to locate where they lost you. But the truth is crueler than any single mistake. They lost you the moment they decided to play. Because you were never meant to be played with, you were meant to be respected. And once respect died, the relationship became a ticking clock they couldn't hear. They thought manipulation was power. You showed them power as withdrawal. They thought control was dominance. You showed them control is self-ownership. They thought winning meant keeping you confused. You showed them winning meant leaving without confusion. Now they avoid you, not because you're loud, not because you're aggressive, but because you remind them of a version of themselves they can't escape, the version that lost everything by being clever instead of honest. They call you dangerous now. That word helps them sleep. It makes their loss feel external instead of earned. But deep down, they know the truth. You didn't end them by force. You ended them by clarity. And clarity is permanent. Once someone realizes their games don't work on you, they can never unrealize it. Once they understand they lost control, they can never feel secure again. Once they see you thriving without them, their entire self-image fractures. That's why they look smaller now, quieter, less sure. That's why they hesitate before speaking your name. That's why even their victories feel hollow. In playing with you, they gambled with someone who doesn't gamble emotionally. They treated your depth like a weakness. They treated your loyalty like an exploit. They treated your silence like permission. And the cost? They lost access. They lost influence. They lost relevance. You didn't ruin their life. You ruined their illusion of control. And for people who live off manipulation, that's worse than loss. It's extinction of identity. They still exist, of course. They go on. They function. They smile. But something fundamental is broken. They don't trust their instincts anymore. They don't feel powerful anymore. They don't feel untouchable anymore. Because the one person they underestimated saw everything, said nothing, and left without bleeding. That's the Joker-level irony. They thought they were playing you. Turns out, they were playing themselves. And you didn't have to lift a finger to end the game. You just stood up, walked away, and let the board collapse behind you. They still don't fully understand what happened to them. That's the quiet aftershock that keeps spreading. They tell the story in fragments, changing details, adjusting blame, trying to shrink the scale of what they lost. But no matter how they narrate it, the outcome stays the same. Something in them never recovered after you left the game. Because when you stepped away, you didn't just remove yourself, you removed the framework they used to make sense of themselves. They had built an entire internal economy around you. Their confidence rose when they felt ahead of you. Their ego inflated when they believed they could influence your emotions. Their self-image depended on being the one who knew more, felt less, controlled better. You were the reference point, the comparison, the measuring stick. When you vanished from that equation, they didn't just lose you, they lost orientation. They wake up with an unease they can't name. It's not heartbreak. It's not longing. It's dissonance, the kind that happens when reality no longer matches the identity you've been wearing. They still reach for the old tactics instinctively, then remember there's no one left to use them on. That muscle memory has nowhere to go. That's what it means to be screwed beyond repair, not broken dramatically, but rendered incompatible with the very strategies that once kept you afloat. They tried to reuse the same behaviors elsewhere, same charm, same manipulation, same slow erosion of boundaries, but something felt off. The reactions weren't the same. The outcomes weren't as satisfying. Because once you've been exposed to someone who sees through you completely, you start doubting your own performance everywhere else. They keep wondering how you figured it out. They assume there must have been a moment, a conversation, a message, a revelation. They don't realize there wasn't one moment. There was accumulation, observation, a long stretch of you choosing silence over reaction, understanding over denial. You didn't confront the lie. You didn't interrogate the motive. You didn't demand truth. You recognized the pattern. And pattern recognition is lethal to games. They didn't respect you when you were kind. That's the joke. The punchline nobody laughs at until it's too late. You smiled, you gave chances, you bent yourself into shapes that made them comfortable, and all they saw was permission. Permission to test you, permission to cross lines, permission to mistake access for authority. You were generous, and they treated generosity like weakness because that's what small minds do when they're handed something they didn't earn. Back then they liked you. Oh, they liked you a lot. They liked how predictable you were. They liked how forgiving you stayed. They liked how your goodness made them feel safe from consequences. But respect? No. Respect requires weight. And when you were nice, they never felt the weight of losing you. You see, niceness made you familiar. Familiar things get touched without asking. Familiar things get used. Familiar things get underestimated. You were warm, and warmth invites people to linger longer than they deserve. They sat too comfortably in your presence, feet up, assumptions loud, manners gone. They didn't fear disappointing you because you always softened the fall. That's where the joke started forming. The moment you stopped explaining yourself, the moment your smile disappeared without warning, the moment your tone flattened and your patience evaporated, that's when the room changed. Suddenly they stood up straighter. Suddenly they chose their words carefully. Suddenly they noticed the silence you carried like a weapon. Funny how that works, isn't it? They don't respect kindness. They respect consequences. When you were nice, they saw you as negotiable. When you became intimidating, they saw you as final. And finality terrifies people who live off second chances. You didn't become loud, you didn't become cruel, you became precise. That's what scared them. Precision means you know exactly what you're doing. Precision means there's no chaos to exploit. Precision means they can't blame misunderstanding anymore. They realized you weren't reacting, you were deciding. That's when respect crept in, dressed as fear, pretending to be admiration. They tell themselves you changed. That's their favorite lie. It makes them feel less guilty. The truth is simpler and uglier. You stopped performing goodness for people who never valued it. You stopped handing out softness to those who only understood force. You didn't lose your heart, you protected it. And suddenly the same people who ignored your boundaries now tiptoe around them. Isn't it hilarious? They didn't respect your honesty, they exploited it. They didn't respect your loyalty, they assumed it was infinite. They didn't respect your patience, they tested how far it would stretch. But the moment you showed them that patience had an end, that honesty could turn into silence, that loyalty could be withdrawn without drama, that's when their tone shifted. They respect you now because they don't know where they stand with you anymore. Uncertainty makes cowards careful. Back when you were nice, they felt powerful around you. Now, they feel exposed. Back then, they thought they knew you. Now, they realize they never did. The version of you they understood was the version that tolerated them. The real you, the one who can walk away without flinching, that one makes them nervous. And nervous people call that intimidating. You didn't raise your voice. You lowered your availability. You didn't threaten, you withdrew. You didn't demand respect, you made disrespect expensive. That's the part they don't talk about. They respect you now because you're no longer trying to be understood. You let them misunderstand you completely, and that took away their leverage. When someone stops needing approval, they become dangerous to insecure people. When someone stops explaining their worth, others start calculating the cost of underestimating them. You became quiet, and that quiet screamed louder than any argument you ever had. They replay conversations in their head now, moments they dismissed, boundaries they laughed at, warnings they ignored because you said them calmly. They see the pattern only after the door is closed, only after access is revoked, only after they realize the version of you they controlled is gone. And here's the sick part of the joke: they don't miss your kindness. They miss how powerful they felt when you were kind to them. That's why their respect feels strange. It's not rooted in admiration. It's rooted in loss. Loss of influence, loss of control, loss of comfort. Respect born from fear isn't pretty, but it's honest. It tells you exactly what people are capable of when they realize you're no longer available for manipulation. When you were nice, they spoke over you. Now they listen. When you were patient, they delayed. Now they respond quickly. When you were forgiving, they repeated the same behavior. Now they hesitate. Nothing about you changed. The rules did. You stopped cushioning consequences. You stopped softening truths. You stopped being the safe place for people who kept setting fires. And somehow that made you intimidating. Not because you became evil, but because you became clear. Clarity scares people who thrive in confusion. They respect you now because you don't need them. That's the ultimate power shift. Need gives others leverage. Independence removes it completely. When they realized you could walk away and sleep peacefully, they understood something they never wanted to face. You were never trapped. You were choosing them. And once you stopped choosing them, the illusion shattered. They respect you now because you don't react emotionally to provocation. Emotional reactions give feedback. They tell people where to push. Your calm gives nothing. It's a blank wall. And people hate walls they can't climb. You became unreadable, unavailable, unimpressed. And suddenly, the same mouths that mocked your softness speak your name carefully. Isn't that the funniest part? They didn't respect you when you cared about their feelings. They respect you now because they care about yours, or at least the consequences of crossing you. That's not love, that's survival instinct. You see, intimidation isn't about being cruel. It's about being unmovable. It's about knowing you won't bend just to keep the peace. Peace that costs self-respect isn't peace, it's surrender. And you stop surrendering. They sense it in the way you look through them now instead of at them. They hear it in the way your words are fewer but heavier. They feel it in the fact that you no longer chase closure. You let silence close things for you. That's why they respect you. Because you don't need the last word. Because you don't explain your exit. Because you don't flinch when you're misunderstood. Because you don't scramble to fix perceptions. You let people believe whatever makes sense to them. And that freedom unsettles them deeply. When you were nice, you carried the emotional weight for everyone. Now you let them carry their own. That shift alone rewired the entire dynamic. They respect you now because you're not trying to prove anything. Proof is for people seeking validation. You already validated yourself. And self-validated people don't beg, don't chase, don't tolerate nonsense just to be liked. They respect you because you're no longer accessible in the same way. Access is power. You lock the door without slamming it. No drama, no announcement, just absence. And absence taught them more than your presence ever did. It's ironic, really. They wanted you to stay soft so they could stay comfortable. You hardened not into cruelty but into boundaries, and now they're the ones adjusting. They call it intimidation because it sounds better than accountability. You intimidate them because you don't need to dominate to have control. You control yourself, and that terrifies people who built their confidence by controlling others. They respect you now because they know you won't hesitate to walk away again. Once someone shows they can leave without regret, every interaction becomes careful. Every word gets measured. Every move gets calculated. You didn't threaten to leave. You left. And now, even when you're present, they feel that distance. They feel that line they can't cross. They feel that edge where your patience ends. That edge didn't exist before because you kept pushing it back for their comfort. You stopped doing that. They respect you now because you no longer tolerate disrespect disguised as jokes, loyalty disguised as obligation, or love disguised as control. You strip the disguises off, and without them, people feel naked. They don't know how to act around you anymore. That confusion breeds caution. Caution looks a lot like respect when fear is involved. You see the difference now. Being liked made you approachable. Being intimidating made you untouchable. One drained you, the other protects you. They respected the version of you they couldn't manipulate. They feared the version of you they couldn't predict. They admired the version of you they couldn't control. And the wildest part? You didn't have to hurt anyone to become that person. You just had to stop hurting yourself. That's the punchline they'll never laugh at. They respected you when you became the consequence instead of the cushion. When you became the absence instead of the availability. When you became the standard instead of the exception. You're not intimidating because you're cruel. You're intimidating because you're done. Done negotiating your worth. Done softening your truth. Done shrinking to make others comfortable. They don't respect you because you're loud. They respect you because you're unmoved. And that, my friend, is the kind of respect that lasts. Because it isn't built on how nice you are, but on how irreversible you've become. They feel hollow now because the game only worked when you didn't see it. It fed on secrecy, on half-truths, on the quiet assumption that you would keep playing your role without ever questioning the script. The moment you understood what was happening, the illusion lost its power. You didn't flip the table. You didn't scream. You didn't expose them dramatically. You simply stopped being usable. And that emptiness you left behind is what they're choking on now. The game was never about winning fairly. It was about control disguised as connection, manipulation masked as concern, and advantage hidden inside familiarity. They enjoyed knowing more than they admitted, moving pieces while pretending nothing was happening. You were supposed to be predictable, emotional, reactive, available. When you stepped out of that position, the structure collapsed inward, leaving them staring at a mess they no longer knew how to manage. They feel hollow because their confidence was borrowed, not earned. It came from your patience, your doubt, your willingness to give benefit of the doubt even when things felt off. Once that generosity ended, so did the fuel for their performance. What's left now is the uncomfortable realization that without your participation, they don't actually hold much power at all. They thought the game made them smart, strategic, untouchable. They didn't realize games only feel clever when the other person isn't aware they're being played. Awareness doesn't just change the outcome, it cancels the entire premise. You didn't beat them at their own game. You made it irrelevant. That's why they feel hollow instead of angry. Anger would mean there's still something to fight over. Hollow means the center is gone. The thrill is gone. The sense of superiority is gone. They don't get to feel clever anymore because there's no one left to outmaneuver. They keep replaying moments in their head, trying to figure out when things shifted, when you stopped responding the same way, when your tone changed, when you started observing instead of engaging. They don't realize the shift didn't happen all at once. It happened quietly, the moment you chose understanding over reaction. Their dirty little game relied on you doubting yourself, on you questioning your instincts, on you believing explanations over patterns. Once you trusted what you saw instead of what you were told, the game lost its camouflage. And nothing feels more pathetic than a trick exposed in plain daylight. They feel hollow because they never planned for you to leave mentally before you left physically. They thought distance would hurt you more than it hurt them. They didn't account for clarity. Clarity doesn't ache, it resolves. The game also fed their identity, being the one who knows, the one who controls the tempo, the one who always has the upper hand. When you stepped away, they lost more than leverage. They lost a version of themselves that only existed in relation to you. They don't miss you the way healthy people miss someone. They miss the dynamic, the access, the ability to provoke reactions and feel significant through them. Without that, they're left with an uncomfortable silence that keeps asking questions they don't want to answer. They feel hollow because you didn't expose them loudly. You didn't give them the chance to defend, deny, or reframe. You let the truth sit where it belongs inside them. That kind of exposure is internal, and it's much harder to escape. They keep telling themselves you'll come back eventually, that this is just a phase, that you'll soften, that you'll forget. Those thoughts are less about hope and more about denial. People who rely on games can't imagine life without players. What scares them most isn't that you left. It's that you left without needing to destroy them. Destruction would have confirmed importance. Your calm departure told them they were no longer central to your story. They feel hollow because the game gave them direction. Now there's no strategy, no moves, no anticipation. Just stillness. And stillness is terrifying when you've spent your life hiding behind motion. They don't know how to interact with you now because the old rules don't apply. You don't respond the same. You don't explain yourself. You don't offer openings. They're left guessing, and guessing makes them feel powerless. They thought they were ahead of you. They didn't realize you were already done. Being done doesn't announce itself. It just stops feeding what once thrived. They feel hollow because you didn't take the bait on your way out. No dramatic confrontation, no emotional outburst, no closure conversation they could manipulate. You denied them a final performance. The game depended on imbalance, on you caring more, on you investing deeper. When that balance corrected itself, everything fell apart. They're now experiencing what it feels like to stand on ground that was never solid to begin with. They tell themselves you're cold now, detached, changed. It's easier than admitting you're clear. Coldness implies damage. Clarity implies choice. Choice is harder to swallow. They feel hollow because you no longer need their approval. That approval was a currency they used to keep you close. Without it, they have nothing to offer. They try to distract themselves with new dynamics, new people, new games. But the problem isn't the opponent, it's the need to play. And that need doesn't disappear just because the board changes. They keep hoping you'll react one day, that you'll call them out, that you'll finally say everything you held back. They don't realize your silence is the final move. Silence doesn't give them anything to work with. They feel hollow because the game once made them feel alive. Now it just makes them feel exposed. Without secrecy, manipulation feels small and obvious. They underestimated how much awareness changes a person. Once you see patterns clearly, you can't unsee them. You don't have to fight them, you just stop walking into them. They feel hollow because they can't rewrite the ending. You closed the story without their input. That loss of narrative control hurts more than losing you. They tell themselves you're pretending to be strong, that you'll break eventually, that this is temporary. These thoughts are comfort mechanisms, not truths. They feel hollow because deep down, they know the game worked only because you were kind, because you gave chances, because you believed in good faith. Once that kindness redirected inward, the system collapsed. They're left with questions they avoided for a long time. Why did they need control to feel secure? Why did they choose manipulation over honesty? Why did winning matter more than connection? Those questions echo loudly now. They feel hollow because you didn't just spoil the game, you made it pointless. Even if they tried again, it wouldn't feel the same. Once a trick is seen, it loses its magic forever. They miss the version of you that made their tactics effective. That version doesn't exist anymore. and that realization is irreversible. They feel hollow because your absence isn't chaotic, it's orderly, clean, final. There's no mess to blame, no drama to hide behind. They can't even fully hate you because you didn't attack them, you simply stepped aside. And being defeated without being fought feels deeply unsettling. They feel hollow because the game gave them a sense of superiority they can't recreate honestly. Real connection requires vulnerability. Games don't prepare you for that. They thought they were playing chess. They didn't realize you were done with the board entirely. They feel hollow because they're left alone with the truth that the game wasn't clever, it was necessary for them. Necessary to avoid accountability, necessary to avoid intimacy, necessary to avoid themselves. You didn't ruin their game out of spite. You ruined it by understanding it. And understanding is the most permanent form of sabotage. They'll carry that hollowness for a long time, not because you hurt them, but because you stopped letting them hurt you. And that's the part that echoes the loudest in the silence they're left with. You didn't just spoil their dirty little game. You exposed how empty it always was, without you in it. And the hollowness doesn't fade with time the way they hoped it would. Time usually softens things, blurs edges, offers excuses. But this emptiness sharpens instead, because it isn't rooted in loss alone, it's rooted in recognition. They recognize that the game didn't fail because of bad luck or timing. It failed because you saw through it, and once seen, it could never function again. They try to replace what they lost with noise, new conversations, new validations, new people to test their tactics on, but none of it lands the same way. Every move feels rehearsed. Every reaction feels forced. Because the one person whose presence made the game feel meaningful is gone, and meaning can't be manufactured. Sometimes the hollowness hits them unexpectedly, in quiet moments when there's no audience and no strategy to distract them. That's when the truth creeps in. The game didn't make them powerful, it just postponed self-awareness. Now that postponement has expired. They also realize something they never intended to learn. You didn't leave because you lost. You left because you won something far more valuable than control clarity. And clarity doesn't return to the battlefield once it's claimed. That understanding follows them everywhere. In conversations that feel shallow, in victories that feel empty, in moments where they realize the game is still available, but the satisfaction is gone, because the only win that ever mattered walked away without looking back. You didn't argue because arguing would have meant you believed their illusion deserved your energy. You didn't raise your voice, didn't defend your truth, didn't try to correct their version of reality. You simply said, "I'd bet." And in that moment you walked out of a world they thought you were trapped in. That calm agreement hit harder than any confrontation ever could. They expected resistance. They were ready for debates, emotional reactions, explanations they could twist and weaponize. Your silence dismantled the entire setup. When you didn't fight back, their confidence lost its opponent. Ego needs friction to feel real. Without it, it collapses under its own weight. Saying 8-bet wasn't surrender, it was recognition. Recognition that you'd already seen through the illusion they were living in. Recognition that their power only existed as long as you kept engaging. The moment you stopped, their authority evaporated. They thought you needed them to understand you. That belief was part of the illusion. When you didn't argue, you showed them you didn't need validation, permission, or agreement to move forward. That realization shattered the role they thought they played in your life. Your calm crushed their ego because it exposed how dependent they were on your reaction. They weren't confident, they were just used to you responding. When you didn't, they were left staring at themselves, without distraction. They replay that moment over and over. The absence of drama bothers them more than any insult would have. They wanted to win an argument. Instead, they lost relevance. You didn't say, "I'd bet," to be dismissive. You said it because you were done negotiating reality with people committed to fantasy. You chose exit over engagement, peace over proving, growth over theatrics. Their illusion depended on you believing it. The second you stopped arguing, the illusion cracked. And when it cracked, they realized how fragile it always was. You didn't expose them publicly. You didn't humiliate them. You let their ego collapse privately where it hurts the most. No witnesses, no noise. Just the slow realization that they no longer mattered the way they thought they did. That's why that moment stays with them. Not because of what you said, but because of what you didn't. You didn't fight. You didn't chase. You didn't explain. You simply walked away, carrying clarity with you, and leaving their illusion behind to fall apart on its own. They never expected acceptance to be more dangerous than resistance. When you said, "I'd bet," it felt like agreement on the surface, but underneath it was a refusal to participate in their fantasy. You didn't step into their reality, you stepped out of it. They mistook your calm for compliance. That misunderstanding cost them everything. Compliance keeps the game alive. Detachment ends it. They thought you'd come back to clarify, to correct, to reclaim your position in their story. You didn't, and that silence rewrote the ending without them. Your lack of argument told them something terrifying: you didn't need to be right anymore. Needing to be right is what keeps egos alive. You let theirs starve. They wanted emotional labor. You gave them indifference. Indifference doesn't negotiate. They expected you to defend your intentions. Instead, you allowed them to believe whatever made sense to them. That freedom became a mirror they couldn't escape. I'd bet wasn't passive. It was final. It meant you trusted consequences more than conversations. They realized too late that arguing would have meant you still cared about the outcome. Walking away meant you'd already chosen yours. Your response forced them to sit with their own words. No interruption, no counterpoint, just their logic echoing back at them. They tried to provoke you afterward. Small jabs, half apologies, subtle bait. You didn't bite. That's when panic set in. They couldn't tell if you were unbothered or already 10 steps ahead. That uncertainty dismantled their confidence. You didn't take the power by force. You let them hand it over when they realized you were unreachable. They thought control came from dominance. You showed them it comes from detachment. They were prepared to win an argument. They weren't prepared to lose significance. Your calm made them question their own certainty. Ego hates questions it can't answer. They replay the moment because it didn't go according to plan. Plans fail when the other person stops participating. You didn't say goodbye dramatically. You didn't announce growth. You simply moved on, and movement is louder than speeches. They realized the illusion only worked when you validated it. Once you stopped, it collapsed naturally. "I bet" became the line they never recovered from because it meant you trusted life to show them what you already knew. And that's the quiet truth they're still stuck with. You didn't argue because there was nothing left to prove. You didn't fight because the fight was beneath you. And with 2 simple words, you didn't just leave the conversation. You ended the illusion they were living in. They didn't understand at first that your "I'd bet" wasn't agreement, it was disengagement. It was the sound of someone stepping off a stage while the actors kept performing to an empty room. They expected you to fight for your version of the truth. When you didn't, it forced them to confront an uncomfortable idea. Maybe the truth no longer needed your defense. Your calm wasn't weakness. It was certainty. Certainty doesn't argue, it decides. They were addicted to the push and pull, to tension, to reactions. Your refusal to play drained the room of oxygen. They didn't realize how much their confidence relied on your participation. The moment you withdrew, their authority felt imaginary. You didn't invalidate them with words. You invalidated them with absence. They kept talking after you checked out, filling the silence with noise, hoping something would land. Nothing did. They mistook composure for passivity. That miscalculation cost them leverage they never knew they needed. You didn't need to expose the illusion. Illusions collapse when belief is removed. They expected confrontation to give them closure. Instead, they got a mirror and they hated what they saw. Your restraint forced them to sit with their own narrative uninterrupted. No edits, no interruptions, just their logic, raw and unprotected. They wanted you emotionally invested. You were already emotionally complete. They couldn't provoke anger because anger requires attachment. You had already detached. They felt small not because you attacked them, but because you didn't acknowledge the fight at all. You didn't try to control the narrative. You exited it. They thought dominance came from being louder. You proved dominance comes from being unmoved. Your silence rewired the power dynamic instantly. No ceremony, no announcement, just a shift. They kept waiting for the follow-up message that never came. That waiting became the punishment. They realized too late that arguments are currency. You stopped paying. You didn't need the last word. You needed the last step away. Their ego searched for cracks in your calm and found none. They thought ignoring them would make you anxious. It made you free. They were prepared to win. They weren't prepared to be irrelevant. You didn't correct their assumptions. You let consequences do the teaching. They hated how clean the exit was. No mess to blame, no chaos to cling to. They replayed the moment obsessively, looking for where they lost control, not realizing control left with you. Your 8-bet was the sound of a door closing softly but permanently. They tried to bait you back with nostalgia, guilt, and half-truths. Nothing worked. They didn't know how to compete with peace. Your composure became proof that you had already chosen yourself. They mistook your kindness in the past for dependence. You corrected that misunderstanding without a word. They realized that their power only existed inside conversations you no longer entered. You didn't abandon the argument. You abandoned the need to be understood by them. They were still fighting shadows while you were already gone. And the truth they can't escape is this. You didn't argue because you were unsure. You didn't say "I'd bet" because you gave up. You said it because you saw through the illusion, stepped beyond their ego, and left them arguing with a reality that no longer included you. They still don't understand how 2 casual words dismantled something they spent years protecting. "I'd bet" sounded simple, almost careless, but it carried the weight of finality. It told them you had already evaluated everything, already decided, and already moved past the point where their opinion mattered. They expected your silence to crack eventually, for you to come back asking questions, seeking clarity, reopening dialogue. But silence held, and with every passing moment, it became clear that you weren't quiet because you were confused, you were quiet because you were finished. They realized their illusion needed constant reinforcement, validation, reactions, emotional labor from you. Once you stopped supplying it, the illusion started starving. And starvation doesn't look dramatic at first, it looks slow, humiliating, and irreversible. Your calm forced them into a position they'd never been in before, alone with their own certainty. No opponent, no resistance, just their ego echoing back at them, unsupported. That's when confidence turns into insecurity.